Hi everyone, and welcome to another digital piano review here at Merriam Pianos. My name is Stu Harrison, and in today's video we are reviewing Casio's AP470 as part of their Celviano line. The AP470 has been with us for a little while, but it's the first time we've had a chance to take a look at it, and its popularity has remained pretty strong in the marketplace. Still get lots of customers asking about it, so we thought, why not do a video? So here we are. We're going to be covering its tone, its action, and more notably, we're going to be discussing a little bit how it compares to the PX870, another piano in the Casio line that has a very similar spec. People have wondered really what are the fundamental differences. So we're going to cover all of that. If it's the first time that you've been to the channel, we would really appreciate and enjoy if you subscribed, become part of our community. Join in with the comments. We try and get to as many of those as we possibly can. And so without further ado, let's get started with the AP470 right away. People who are familiar with the channel are going to notice more and more Casios winding up within these reviews. And this is being driven entirely by really one reason or one source, and it's because customers are calling us and asking us and referencing more and more of the Casios. And I think this is ultimately coming from one place, which is the company is continuing to improve the product and put out instruments which I think are gaining in musical credibility and musical respect. This is an area where the company really started at the bottom of the ladder, and that was many, many years ago sort of known as a lower cost alternative, not necessarily, you know, poorly made or anything, just not really competing with some of the other companies. And over the last several years, there's been a major shift and a major focus to bring these instruments up to a highly competitive level, both in terms of pricing and in terms of musical quality, with some of the other suppliers that have been there for years, such as Yamaha, Roland, Kawai, Korg. And with the latest batch of Casios, and they're constantly refreshing their line, there are many that start to really give some of the more prominent models a run for their money in some areas. There's a few other areas where I think Casio has still got some room to grow, but then again, when you look dollar for dollar at what they're providing, it is in a lot of cases a higher value than what you would get out of some of the other companies if some of the other feature sets just weren't that critical or that important to you. And the AP70 is one that certainly fits that description. In Canada, it comes in right around $1,900, which means in the States it's probably $1,300, $1,400. And for that price, you're going to be looking at instruments such as the Roland FP60, Roland F140, you know, Kawai's KDP 110, maybe one of their new, the ES 520 that's coming out is probably going to land in that price range. And what do you get for the money? What is Casio really truly delivering from a pianistic standpoint? And the reality is that you're getting an action which is properly weighted, feels great, it's got a nice texture on it, seems like out in the field, these actions are quite durable. And I know a lot of customers who are playing them and going, huh, I was not expecting something to feel that solid or that credible or that interesting. I'm hearing the same thing when it comes to tone, where they're like, I had no idea that Casio was putting stuff out that sounded that convincing and that compelling. And so the AP470 uses the same sound chip and the same action as the PX870, and I've already seen people asking, well, please do a comparison between the 470 and the 870. I think they're trying to really better understand exactly what the specific differences between those two instruments are. I've already done an extensive review on the PX870, and so that might also be worth checking out. But let's start there. What does the 470 at a higher price point give you over the 870, and how does that compare to some of those other instruments in the same price range? Well, the first thing it does is it gives you 4 speakers instead of 2. So this has 2 tweeters, although they're fairly large, they're more like mid-range speakers that are on the top of the instrument. And that's where this panel, this extra panel that's part of the body, actually contributes to the acoustic experience of playing this instrument. It properly directs those higher frequencies at your ear, somewhat similar to what you would get on an acoustic piano, probably closer to like an upright experience than a grand, and it's an active speaker that's generating those frequencies. And then you've got two more main speakers on the bottom, which are focusing the majority of the lower and the mid-range frequencies down at the floor, something more like what you would get with a grand piano. All in all, each side, left and right, are 20-watt amplifiers, and it's their AiR synthesis technology is what Casio calls it, but I believe it's like a 4-layer stereo sample base that they're using. I don't believe it's individually noted 4-layer, because that would be pretty intense if that was the case, but still I think you're dealing with a 4-layer stereo sample, and they have some really great reverberant engines on the Casios as well. If you're looking at this compared to, say, a CN29, which is a Kawai product that sits several $100s still above where the Casio sits, what are you getting for that money? What are you losing by going with a Casio in that range? Well, with the tone generation on the AP-470 versus the CN29, I think the nugget, the core sound on this comes pretty close to the detail that you get on the Kawai. However, when you're playing through it, there's several spots where you're going to notice some difference between an instrument like the CN29. And one of those, I would say, is the high-end decay on the Casio. Yeah, to me, the authenticity of the acoustic piano was falling somewhere between, say, the KDP-110 and the CN29 within the Kawai line. I think the RP-501 on the Roland side certainly produces a fuller, slightly more complex tone, but again, we're talking about $500 or $600 more on the Roland. I think the tone itself is quite similar to what you'd get on, say, an RP-102 or an F-140, but the speaker quality on the AP-470 is likely a little bit higher and possibly a little bit richer. So it's finding its own niche right in there in that upper mid-teens, where the tone itself is probably a little better than what you're getting on most of the other instruments in the $1,200, $1,300 range. You're getting a little more speaker, but then unlike some of the instruments at the $2,000 range, very limited ability to edit that sound. You're really not talking about much of a modeling type synthesis engine. This is pretty much fixed. So although you do have the ability to modify some of those parameters, such as the reverb and the touch curve, you don't have something like the Virtual Technician app or the Piano Designer app, where you can get in there and start editing all kinds of things. So, the tone engine and the sound that you're getting out of this AP-470 is really geared towards a player who isn't that interested in mucking around with the sound that much. Or, of course, just the subjective preference for what Casio is producing at the tone. But as I said, I think it finds sort of a nice middle ground in terms of how it's priced and the quality of the tone it produces. It's also got 256 notes worth of polyphony, which is very high. That's also similar to what you get, well, it's exactly the same as what you get on the PX870, which makes sense. I'm pretty sure it's virtually the same chipset between those two instruments. There are 22 sounds to choose from on this instrument, and you can do that either with the Cordana app, or they've got these very nice little cheat labels just behind the keys. Makes it super easy to select. And so the function key plus some of these other ones will let you pull those up. So there's a wide variety of tones through those 22, a lot of the standard hits that you would probably expect. So you've got 2 sets of grand piano tones, and I'll just play them for you here. So you've got grand piano 1, and then you've got grand piano 1 mellow, and grand piano 1 bright. And then you've got grand piano 2, which is a whole other sample set. Mellow. And then bright. It's sometimes hard to tell whether those are just 2 samples with 3 different signal processing packages on top, like an EQ and maybe a filter or something like that. But nonetheless, you've got 6 distinct playing experiences within that grand piano 1 and grand piano 2. You've got modern rock jazz piano, which is a little less complex of a sample, and then E-piano 1 and 2, the FM style EP. And harpsichord and vibraphone. And finally some strings. So I think the strongest sounds in there are probably the vintage keyboards and the acoustic piano sound, but there's definitely some passable sounds in there through the strings and some of the other ones that are really fun to play along with, and may not be at a studio level, but again, we have to consider the price point of the instrument. So that's pretty much the discussion on tone. What are we getting? We are getting 4 speakers, 20 watts for each side, the left side and the right side, both 20 watt speakers or 20 watt amplifiers. We've got this nifty little panel here that actually can be closed or opened to direct some of the sound more towards your ear from those high-end tweeters. We've got 256 notes of polyphony, which is way more than what you really realistically need in any scenario for solo piano playing. You've got 22 onboard sounds and really quite a complex and dynamic piano tone for this price range. What are you giving up by saving the money by going to something like this versus spending a little more on, say, an equivalent Roland or a Kawai? Well, one is going to be the editability of some of those piano tones, and if that's important, you may want to consider investing and upgrading into something that in Canadian dollars is going to be something a little closer to the mid 2000s, and US it's going to be, high teens. And if you want something that's got action with escapement, we are going to get to action a little later, but that's something else that you may be missing. And then, of course, just the subjective preference of whether you like the sound or not. It's definitely an enjoyable sound, and I think that it comes off as quite authentic. It's not nearly as processed a sound as what you get on some of those PXS1000 and 3000 with that acoustic simulation, the signal processing that they have on this. This is much more conventional in terms of what they're offering. They give you the ability to edit the reverb, ability to edit some of the touch curve, but other than that, really what you're presented with is just a high quality sample that they've built that piano playing experience around. So we're going to throw some of that up on a slide for you just to give you a quick visual checkup of what we've just discussed, and be back in just a minute with the discussion of action. Thank you so much for being with us. So the AP-470 uses exactly the same action, or at least it feels like this, and it seems like this from the description on Casio's website. It uses like a tri-scaled, tri-sensor, weighted, gradiated action. I don't believe it has escapement. Certainly doesn't feel like it's got any escapement on it, but in terms of how it's weighted, it feels really quite satisfying to play. I like how the bottom of the key bed feels, the key dip feels exactly right. And one of the other things that I always mention, because I think it's kind of become a bit of a trademark of the modern Casio instruments on the market, is the texture and how they texture the top of the keys. Roland does this certainly as well. Kawai would be one of the least textured. Yamaha is probably one of the least textured, at least in this price range. And but Casio came out with these exaggerated ebony textures on the black keys way back in the like 2013, 2014. I think it first showed up. The PX160 had this, and an ivory simulated texture on the white keys. And I think one of the things I generally will tell people is if you try this in a showroom and it's brand new out of the box, one of the things that I've noticed is the black keys do tend to be a little bit more slippery than I would personally prefer, but that goes away after a very short period of playing. Just get a little hand oil on those keys and you're good to go. It's got a nice, it really strikes a nice balance between the slip that you need, but the grip that you also need to tackle a wide range of repertoire. The weight of the key, as I said, there were some complaints or some observations of some of the lower level actions that Casio had created for example, the PXS1000. I don't detect that there's really any discrepancy between the weight of the black key and the white key on the AP-470 or the PX870. Feels great. I really have no no complaints about it at all. I find the action to be probably one of the most impressive things about the Casios in this particular range. We're going to get some of those specs up on the screen describing the action for you, and then we'll be back with a wrap-up of just some of the other more technical, non-musical features of the instrument. Thanks so much. So besides that, the AP470 has the 4 speakers versus the 2 speakers on the 870, I guess one of the things that's a little bit hard to quantify or place a specific value on is the extra size in the cabinet, because there are going to be rooms, placements, and customers where they just would prefer the instrument to look a little more like a piano. The PX870 is a pretty slimmed down, it's a very contemporary look. This is a more traditional look, and there's just more wood, there's just more furniture. And so even though that doesn't constitute, a technical difference or improvement over the piano, furniture still has its place, it has its value, and it costs something to make, and obviously there's going to be a component of that in the price. So part of what you're paying for when you get the AP470 is an enlarged cabinet, and one that's a little more sturdy, and one that's, to some people, going to seem or be a little more attractive as well. It has the ability to record both audio and MIDI onto a USB key. It's got the USB connection that you can hook this up to a computer, as well as the Cordana app. It also has a number of onboard songs, and in conjunction with that, as on the Cordana app, or even just on its own, Casio and I think Roland, the two of them do an excellent job of delivering this in their software and in their instruments, is they've really put a focus on preloading the pianos with famous music, both classical and in some cases contemporary music, and it's a lot of fun to play along with. So you get the Clair de Lune, you get the Furleys, you get all of these classics, and I know with the Cordana app it gives you the ability to learn these pieces with sort of the trailing colors. Don't know what to call it, but it's sort of like the MIDI instructional videos that you can see all over YouTube. So they have that on the app, and it's combined with the score itself. So if you're using it on a larger tablet, it's really quite fun and it's really quite engaging. The Cordana app is free of charge. There, you can download that off the App Store, or I believe it's cross-platform. Both Android and iOS have it, no issue. The instrument also has a triple pedal system, and that comes in a nice brass finish and a true pedal board. So all in all, the whole package just feels and looks a little more solid and a little more filled out than the PX870, which from a spec standpoint really is its closest cousin within the Casio lineup. So just to sum up this instrument, I like what I play, I like what I see. And what I find is this is going to deliver a lot of value for people who are in the marketplace, where I think the priority really is just a satisfying piano tone, got a little bit of functionality, and if this is the type of action that you really prefer. It shaves off some money off some of those plus $2,000 instruments from Yamaha, Roland, Casio, or Kawai, where you are paying for a slightly more advanced technology, the ability to edit some of that piano tone at a much, much higher level than you get on the Casio, but you are paying for that ability. I also think that the flexibility in some of the software is also a little bit constrained compared to what you can get from some of those other manufacturers, but again, consider the price point. So, I think for customers where, like I said, they like the piano tone and a great cabinet is really all they're looking for, a good digital alternative to a basic acoustic piano, they're going to find a lot to like with the AP470. I would definitely recommend, if it's on your list, to do your best to get to a showroom and play it next to the likes of a Roland RP102 or F140, or it's kind of sandwiched between the Kawai KDP110 and the CN29. On the Yamaha side, this is going to go up really well against, say, the YDP 144, 164. So try to find a showroom where it's there and see if it strikes your fancy. but certainly it's deserving of consideration. And like I said, those were the strong points for me. Was a great action, and I think a very nice job of rendering a good acoustic piano tone for the price point. So, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you stick around the channel and check out some of those other videos for all of those instruments that I just mentioned. I'm pretty sure we have reviews for virtually all of them. And good luck with your piano shopping. If this is the first time that you have come across the channel, we would really love for you to enjoy commenting, become part of the community. We love seeing people from all over the world find us and start participating in the discussions and just enjoying all things piano. That's what we're all about here at Merriam Pianos. So thank you so much for watching. My name is Stu Harrison, and we will see you again.